what about those lame dudes we're talking about?
The lame dudes?
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about that, the comic. There was a comic in Japan called, was it called Charisma Man? Hold up, I'll look it up. I think it was called Charisma Man, but I think it was drawn by an American living, an expatriate living in Japan. And so...
Charisma Man.
Charisma Man. It was in English. Originally, I think it was written in English and it was for like expatriates to read. But it's basically a dude. I never read the comic, but I was told about this by Japanese people. Then I looked it up. I'm like, oh, okay, it makes sense. The premise makes total sense. It's just a guy who's kind of a really plain, kind of nobody from where he's from, which I believe is the U.S. He's just a blonde white guy, but he's kind of very average and there's nothing very special about him. But then when he goes to Japan, all of a sudden he has superpowers because he's a gaijin. And so he becomes this like muscular guy and everything, you know. And like, dude, I've met many charisma men in Japan.
In Japan, yeah.
And they're always the lamest people ever. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it to insult them, but dude, like, you realize that where they're from, they're very lame. They're cornballs.
Yeah.
They're mad whack.
Outcasts.
They're not really a cool person. And I'm not saying that like I'm the coolest dude ever. I'm just saying their behavior is the behavior of a whack person. But Japanese people can't discern that because they don't speak their language.
Right.
And they have no idea because even gestures and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they're not going to read into that because they don't have cultural context for that.
Right.
And these people really feel like they thrive in Japan because they get that attention I was telling you about earlier, which is like, you know, they'll say, Biru hitatsu kudasai.
And
with like a beer, please. You know, and it's just like, wow, you're a genius. And like, they really love that attention, which also makes me feel like maybe where they're from, they don't get that much attention from people because they're just eating all of it up, you know, like. And and then, you know, you talk to them a little bit and then they'll just start saying stuff.
Yeah, then you start
to see, just like, okay, now I know this person is just whack, dude. Like, you know, they'll be like, because, you know, I met a few people and they're like, how long you been here? You know, it's like, oh, you speak Japanese? I'm like, yeah. He's like, how long you been here? And I'm like, oh, I've just been here like a year and a half. And they're like, oh, and so now they're like your senpai. They're like, I've been here 5 years. I'm an English teacher. Let me show you the ropes.
I know those.
Let me show you the ropes, young Padawan, young Jedi. Like, you know, and you're thinking, you know, like, dude, I believe in being cool to people. Like, you know, whatever. I'm like, okay, this person doesn't speak Japanese, but like, they're gonna show me the ropes. Obviously, you can learn things from people even if they don't speak the language because they've been there a longer time. So I'm like, okay, let's hear it. But then it's all nonsense.
Yeah.
And it's all like, hey, you know what? Like, you know, if you do this, you can get away with this. And it's always stuff where it's like, dude, you're just an asshole. Like, you know, you're not teaching me the ropes. You're just teaching me how to be somebody people are not going to appreciate here.
Oh, especially with girls too. Japanese girls, they like this if you do this. I'm like, yo, man, I don't have to do any of that.
Right.
Just love me anyways, man.
Yeah, dude, like the charisma man is a real thing in Japan.
You said somebody named him, what is it, like LBH or something like that?
Oh, yeah, LBH, yeah, losers back home. Yeah, like I watched a video about it recently. We were looking at like the whole like gaijin thing. I just saw a lot of stuff popping up, and you know how it works, where the more videos you watch about a certain topic, you start getting more. So then I started getting, first it was expatriates saying, hey, there's a lot of foreigners coming out here making it look bad for all of us. You guys need to stop. There's a lot of videos like that. Then I started getting Japanese videos of saying, please don't do this in Japan. You know, and it's like, and they sounded kind of aggravated, and they showed stuff in the news, like these, like, you know, social media people getting arrested, and it's a whole thing, and it's on TV. And I'm like, man. And then I just started getting like straight up, like just videos of Japanese women talking shit about like Western dudes and all this other stuff, which was hilarious. And then, you know, they were talking about the LBHs, which are the losers back home.
Yo.
It was a big fight. It was the LBH versus Passport Bro.
Oh,
right?
I see.
And it was like a whole, so it was like not only like how people are like misbehaving in Japan as you know, visiting foreigners, but also, you know, the ones that have intent to find a woman. So it was like a video that had women from, and it was an American women angry about American dudes
flying over to Japan,
flying abroad, trying to find women, because then these dudes are talking about like cultural things, like how women in Asia treat their partner versus how women in the Western world treat their partner, and all these other things. And so it was like a whole bunch of things. And eventually the LBH term popped up, which I thought was hilarious because it's like,
now,
you know,
now they even have a term now.
Right,
Initialized it, LBH.
Well, dude, she sounded mad salty. It was an Asian girl in Japan, so she might have been. By the way she was talking and stuff, it gave me the impression that she might have been somebody who was raised in Japan but went to international schools. So she spoke English fluently.
Okay.
And she did not have a Japanese she didn't have a Japanese accent in English.
Oh, but was her
But
English
also
like
the words
super
she was
clean?
using. Yes.
Probably international school kids.
Yeah. So it was like an English that's like fluent with no discernible accent.
Super textbook English.
But at the same time, the words that are being used are not quite, like, you can't pinpoint, like, okay, this person's West Coast, this person's East Coast. It was kind of, you know. So anyway, I thought it might be something like that. But she was saying, oh, you know, these guys, they come here and like they think this and that and the other. And I thought, okay, well, first, this girl sounds kind of salty, like she's not getting the attention she wants. She wasn't a bad looking girl, but this sounded, there was a little bit of salt sprinkled in there. But at the same time, she wasn't lying. Like I've met enough LBHs to.
Those are the dudes like we always talked about back when we were in Japan. Yo, so many of them.
Well, dude, they're obnoxious.
Yeah. I have my Gaijin friends in Japan, but yo, a lot of Gaijins I met in Japan, LBH.
It's just obnoxious, and it's like, well, the other thing is, which I always forget, you have to realize too, like a lot of these people, they don't speak Japanese, so they don't have the opportunity to talk to people from Japan that much either. Like either they find a Japanese person who speaks English, which there are. I mean, I didn't meet many, but I've talked to other artists that have visited, and they're like, yeah, everybody I spoke with spoke English. I'm like, where the hell were you? I mean, I guess they weren't at Kodansha, or they weren't at like all the normal places I went to.
Nobody at Tony or spoke English. Right.
Well, yeah. So, but if it is a case where you're speaking to somebody in Japan who does speak English, they're way more aware of your cultural background, right, than the average Japanese person. So it's going to be a lot smoother. You're not going to have so many, you're not going to have a lot of hiccups because they're going to be aware of, like, the whole thing. But I think also they're I don't know, their socializing capabilities are kind of limited too. So you ever realize when you talk to a Westerner, or at least back then, it might be different now because there's more over there, but like there's kind of this desperation to talk, like, it's somebody else from my country. Yeah. And it's just like all these things come out, which I get, because after 4 years living in Japan, I kind of felt the same way. Right. Where they want, I mean, when you came in to visit, it was like ducks here, all right. Like I could just say everything I felt. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I don't know if I sounded like mad. I mean, I was really stressed out with all the deadlines and everything. And then, the day-to-day stuff can get stressful too, especially when you're learning all these things firsthand. Like you weren't given a heads up about certain things.
That's one thing too. We never had we had YouTube, but it wasn't like this.
No, hell no.
With all these, like, yo, before you go to Japan. Like, before you do, man, everything was firsthand. Like, we had to experience firsthand. Right. Like, head first, too.
Yeah, I remember there was a duck phrase every time. It's like, you'll get used to it. You'll get used to it. You always used to say that. And I was always like, I don't know if I'm gonna get used to any of this. But you do eventually. You were right. I mean, that's the whole loser winner is mad subjective, dude.
Yeah, but yo, again, like those guys, because most like Gaijins I met, it's either they like anime or just like Japanese girls. And the rest, I guess like the Gaijins who fully assimilated to Japan and living that Japan life, you know, you don't really get to meet them because they're already inside of like some kind of like Japanese community already. So
well, also they're working their ass off if they live the Japanese
like working Japanese style too.
Exactly, dude. I remember I've never met so many Argentine people outside of Argentina as I did in Tokyo. It was crazy. I would have never expected it, but it's just by chance. It was the World Cup. I went to Roppongi to watch Argentina versus Nigeria.
Right.
Argentina won. Argentina campeón. And,
versus Nigeria. That sounds bad
Argentina,
already, man.
I don't know. Argentina has lost against Nigeria too.
Oh.
So there's a rivalry there. I mean, you know, not much of a rivalry because we do have a way stronger soccer history, but anyway, you know, it does happen. There are upsetting matches sometimes where you get scored like 5-0 and it's not a team that's known to be, you know. So, and I think I told you, like I went to Don Quixote to buy an Argentine jersey because I didn't have one and I wanted to represent.
yeah. The one in Roppongi, right?
Yeah. And of course the one, you know, the jersey sizes are Japanese size. So like the biggest one I found was super small. It was like super tight. I was looking all
medium here.
Yeah.
It's like 2X large there.
Yeah. So I bought that, and on my way out, I see another guy with a jersey, and you know I saw him. I didn't think he was Argentine because a lot of people wear the Argentine jersey anyway. But I was like, all right, you know, representing. So I'm like, Argentina campeón. And then the dude was on his phone, and he turns around, and he's like, para. And he's like, come here. And I'm like, oh, shit, this dude's from Argentina. And then, you know, he hung up, and then he's like, who are you? I'm like, that was strange. What do you mean, who are you? Who are you to talk like that? And he's like, are you from Argentina? And I'm like, well, yeah, I grew up in Argentina, yeah. And he's like, I guess I told him, yeah. You know, I guess the whole explaining to people from Argentina that I'm born in the U.S. and raised in Argentina.
Yeah, and this and that.
I'm just like, I'm from Argentina. And he's like, well, I told him, sí, soy de Buenos Aires. And he's like, pero si a vos no te conozco. He's like, but I don't know you. And I'm like, who the fuck is this dude, man? And then it turns out like he was the head of the Tango Association in Tokyo.
Oh, okay.
So like there's a lot of like people like tango music and dance in Japan.
Tango. Not that tango, but
yeah. And so like, you know, he basically knew most Argentines that were in Tokyo.
Okay. That's why he was
and he's like, I don't know you. And the reason he didn't know me is because I was living that Japanese life where I was just working.
Right.
And just with Japanese people. So I wasn't hanging out with you know, expatriates.
Yeah. That's the thing about like I guess you and me, because we went straight into the Japanese community because all our friends are Japanese too.
Right.
And we never had a chance to like, I guess, join these like Gaijin communities, like Korean community, Korean American community, Japanese American communities, and any of that stuff. So I guess that's that too. I remember my friend, he's like, oh, you want to go to a Korean barbecue? I'm like, oh, like where? I was like, there's a Koreatown, Shin-Okubo. I was like, where is Shin-Okubo? I'm like, yo, you perform in Kabukicho all the time. It's right across the street from Kabukicho.
Hey, man.
Yo, I'm like all those nights in Kabukicho, and I never went to Shin-Okubo.
You're talking to the wrong person. I lived there 4 years and saw very limited parts of the country, so.
Oh yeah, Shin-Okubo is jumping now. Back then it was dead as fuck.
Dude, it's that K-pop wave.
LBHs. Guess I'm LH2. Loser here too.